Come in, your sister's waiting." Mom stepped back and led the way to the dining room. "Hey!" Amberlynn waved from the table where she sat with a half-full glass of red wine and an expression somewhere between relieved and irritated. "Took you long enough." "You didn't have to wait," I said. I'd made that clear to my mother when I'd called from the clinic an hour ago to let her know I was going to be late, right before I scarfed the fries left over from my lunch and chased it with a vanilla latte supplied by my ever-adored physician's assistant, though Leslie's job in no way meant she was actually supposed to act like my actual assistant. The fact that we were best friends made her a great asset at work. The clinic where I worked was usually calm, and my hours weren't overwhelming at all. But now and then we had a crazy day, and those days always seemed to coincide with my mother's dinners. "Well, sit down, for heaven's sake. Let's eat. This pot pie is undoubtedly a gelatinous disaster inside a crust at this point." Mom put the pie down on the table, pursing her lips and shaking her head, making her spray-frozen bob brush her shoulders on each side. "Well, when it sounds so appetizing," I said. "Don't sit yet, Paige," Amberlynn said, her voice low. "I thought you were starving. Just thought you would want some wine before the Inquisition begins." Amberlynn pointed to the kitchen just beyond the table. "Oh, please," Mom said as I ducked past her to pour myself a glass of wine. "Mom, you want?" I raised the bottle and looked over my shoulder. Mom sighed dramatically. "Well, if we're all going to behave like lushes tonight, I guess I'd better. Are you planning to stay over then, Paigey?" I returned to the table with the bottle. "Mom, one glass with food before I go home in 2 hours should be fine." My mother raised an eyebrow but put up no further argument, and I poured myself a glass much less generous than I would have without the presence of the judgy eyebrow. "The pot pie is great, Mom," I said around my first bite. It was, and it was miles away from the usual protein shakes and cereal dinners I made for myself. "Oh, you're just saying that." Mom waved a hand and pretended the compliment wasn't absolutely required at Sunday dinner. "Of course she is, Mom. You'd be annoyed if one of us didn't say it." Amberlynn took another big bite and through a mouthful added, "No, she's completely right. This is amazing." We talked about her cafe on the town square in downtown Singletree, which she had recently renamed and had a huge sign made for, and about Amberlynn's job at the high school. And then all eyes turned to me, and I gave as brief a summary of my work at the family clinic, where I was a general practitioner, as I could. It turned out that hearing about scads of kids with runny noses and coughs didn't make for great conversation, and as busy as I always was at work, very little changed in the small-town practice I ran. "And did you treat any handsome men today, Paigey?" Mom looked ever hopeful as she brought up her favorite topic, and Amberlynn grinned expectantly. Since my younger sister was engaged and my older sister had escaped to New York City, they were rarely the subject of Mom's matchmaking meddling at this point. But in my aging and clearly withering state as a divorcee at almost 31, I was dead in the crosshairs. That would be a no. Not that I would have been excited about the idea of dating a patient, but at this point, if a good-looking single man happened to wander through the clinic doors, I wouldn't send him to the other family practice across town. "You have to get over Adam," Mom said sadly, shaking